my grades, for sure.
That's right.
But we're at a good spot. I've almost got all my stuff in, and I've got to know my students. I'm pretty familiar with how they're working in the
Good.
classroom and how to work with them. But
That's awesome.
it's got its struggles, but we're getting there.
Good.
So.
So Kyle switched schools from last year to this year, so there's been a transition there. So he's doing a really good job fitting in here at Hesperia High School. So did you get observed today by your principal?
I did, yeah.
And
so
how'd
I got
that
to have
go?
him come on in. We were doing a review today. We have our unit test because we finished up our unit for this quarter because the end of the quarter is this Friday. So he came in and got to see us review everything that we've been learning, and I did a review basketball game, which was a lot of fun. All the kids were pretty excited and interactive. Some of them were really excited.
Interactive?
Yeah, and I don't know if that was a good thing. We'll find out when he talks to me on
Describe
Friday.
how that went. Like, how do you do a basketball game?
So basketball review game, we had questions posted. I projected questions. Each of my kids were in groups of 4. They had a piece of paper with all of their names on it, and they would respond as a group. So they would talk together, answer the question, and then I would go around and give them a check whether or not they got it. If they didn't get it, then I would tell them, hey, let's make sure that we're listening, because right now I'm going to go over the correct answer, and I would have everyone yell out what the correct answer was. And then we would talk about that question and why that was right or why it was wrong. And that's the basketball part. How does basketball play into it? That was the part I liked, was doing the questions and stuff. But basketball, I actually had a little staggered 1 point, 2 point, 3 point line in the classroom, and they got to shoot baskets. If they got it right, then they could choose if they got a 1 point, 2 point, and the winner with the most points is.
That's awesome, and that's really good knowing your audience since your principal played basketball. He's a huge fan.
Yeah, he likes competition.
I've done something similar with like putting, like different places, and putting's a little harder in my opinion, but yeah, so that's fun. The
He
kids
would
always
also like
get
that one too.
Yeah,
He's a golfer,
that's
so.
right. So they get excited. So if you ever want to, borrow my putting thing,
Yeah,
you'll have to do
it's a
that
good
next
idea.
time. Yeah.
Similar setup as far as like how they would
Yeah,
put it in? Okay.
yeah, very similar. I've done it with playing a game called like grudge ball, so I can go into that another time. But if they get so many points or whatever, then they can wager extra points by putting or basketball or whatever you want to do.
Okay.
And so that's why it's called grudge ball. That's the ball part of it. So that's kind of fun. So you've done your initial assessment, and was there anything that surprised you or stood out, this being your second year and doing assessment again?
It was overall pretty good. The assessment was, I saw some of the things that I definitely could be working on, which is one of the things that I'm working on now is assessment. So that's my main focus right now. Some of the things were expected. How I was working with other teachers, I marked those ones higher, and I've been working on that from last year, how I work with other teachers. Right. But my main focus was assessment and getting to know students' prior knowledge, those two things.
Good, that's good. So which, did you choose the standard for this first inquiry?
Yeah, so kind of like I said, I'm working on assessments. I'm going to be working on my both formative and summative assessments and how I'm going to incorporate that into my classroom. So I'm giving the quizzes, and like as a department we're giving a lot of quizzes, and my kids are even saying you're giving a lot of quizzes, but I need to figure out how to make those effective for my instruction.
Right. So like when you give a quiz, what do you do with that information? Does it change like what you teach the next day or the next week, or?
That's kind of what I'm saying. It
That's
doesn't. Like
doesn't right
it's
yet,
they're like a quiz is a summative assessment of the lesson, and I do some formative stuff. It's mostly like answering questions and interacting with them throughout the lesson, like throughout each daily lesson. But those quizzes are more formative, and I feel like a quiz shouldn't be the finish of the lesson. That should be assessed. Did we get it? Do we need to keep going?
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out how to do that better, and I'm thinking, I'm working on it.
So I've switched my philosophy with quizzes. I'm a math teacher, and so we have always quizzed quite a bit to do that check for understanding, at least halfway, if not more, in a chapter that's long. And so I used to, give it, and then the kids that knew it did great, and the kids that didn't did bad, and their grade dropped.
Right.
And Then when the test came, if those kids didn't get help, they still did that, and
Right.
nothing happened. And so I was actually in the middle of getting my master's degree when the teacher of that ed course, like every time we had a quiz, you know, not a full-blown test,
Right.
we got to work with a partner. And sometimes she let us use open note, open book. And she said, my philosophy is the quiz is a chance for me to see where you're at. But if you don't know it, then that didn't help you, you know,
Right.
because it's just time in class. And so I started, my quizzes aren't always like this,
Mhm.
but I'll let them work with a partner, but I partner them up. Like a student that's not getting it or has been absent with somebody that I think feels pretty strong. You know what I mean? So I vary their partners. And if there needs to be 3 people in a group to make it, you know, balance out, I'll do that too. And those have been the greatest change in my classroom, I would say, over the years, because I walk around and I hear their conversations. You know what I mean? And in math, maybe it's a little different in science because they're like trying to figure out the process to get to the answer. And so it's
Mhm.
not like a one-word answer. I don't know what, you know, it depends on what your
Yeah,
quizzes are
sometimes
like.
it can be that way. Yeah.
But them knowing why it is that. And so it ends up being formative also. Like they are learning as they're doing the quiz. And then like in their grade, it's worth next to nothing.
I was gonna say,
you
how
don't-
does that work?
So
It's not.
I don't, it's worth next to nothing, or I don't even put it in. You know what I mean? Like it's for my information, and it just listening to them, like they learn way more than if I sat up and did the problems for them, or you know they did it, they left them blank or got them wrong, and then I hand them back and I ask them to do corrections. All they're going to do is copy off somebody else, but they didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know if you can fit that into something or not, but it's
Well, that's kind of how it worked today. Like with them as in groups and doing a competition, they were talking. As soon as the question posted, they would read it and they'd like talk to each other. Okay,
Right.
we got to get the right answer. And so they were all engaged. And I had my kids that's right here. My failing students. They don't do anything when we have
Uh-huh.
assignments, but during this activity, they were giving me all right answers because they
that's
wanted to shoot
awesome.
the basket.
So that's kind of the same
It's like,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I kind of like that.
So maybe consider doing something like that if you're doing a lot of quizzes, like switch it up a little bit. That would be good. Last time we talked about your EL students, that you have quite a few students that don't speak English and like the struggle with that. So how's that coming along?
It's coming. So I'm working a lot with the aide that I have in the classroom. She's a big help. Helps me translate the assignments to them, and I've been leaning a lot on her. And then I have some students that they don't speak English like at all. So I am struggling with how to communicate with them and how to modify things. I have them use Google Translate and give them the translations that I can. I have
Right.
some texts that are in their language. I have one that's Vietnamese speaker, and so I have a new glossary that she can use
Oh.
that has all of our subject specific words, so she can look those up in the glossary and hopefully get a better understanding of them.
Do you
But it's a
have
struggle.
any students in that class that are also Spanish speakers, but they are higher performing?
Yes, and they
So-
do help me.
So okay.
Yeah,
So I would say
yeah.
that's the only trick up my sleeve is to partner